The rain came down like judgment from a broken sky, cold and relentless, soaking through cardboard boxes and cheap fabric as if the world itself had decided this was the day to give up on them. On a narrow city street lined with brick buildings and flickering traffic lights, a widow and her young son stood surrounded by the scattered remains of their life. Their belongings were piled on the curb, blankets, a chipped lamp, a suitcase that refused to close, while strangers hurried past pretending not to see. The landlord's words still echoed in her ears, sharp and final. Evicted. No more time. No more chances. Just rain, shame, and a child clinging to her leg with a teddy bear tucked tightly under his arm. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected heroes, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that even in the darkest storms, light can break through. Mara Whitfield had never imagined her life unraveling like this. 2 years earlier, her husband Daniel had left for what was supposed to be his final overseas deployment. He had promised their son Liam that when he returned, they would build a treehouse in the small park behind their apartment. He had promised Mara they would finally take that long-postponed trip to the ocean. But promises made under a quiet kitchen light do not always survive war. When the officers knocked on her door at dawn, the world did not just stop, it shattered. Daniel never came home. Grief is heavy, but bills are heavier. Mara worked double shifts at a diner, her hands cracked from detergent and her back aching from standing for hours. She tried to keep Liam's world steady, tried to fill the silence where his father's laughter used to be. But rent climbed, tips shrank, and the savings Daniel had left behind dissolved into medical expenses and overdue notices. The final blow came in the form of a typed letter slipped under the door. 30 days. No extensions. She had begged. She had explained. She had shown the landlord the folded flag she kept on the shelf, the one presented to her at the funeral. He had looked uncomfortable for a moment, then unmoved. Business was business. Sentiment did not cover mortgages. Now, as the rain plastered her hair to her face, Mara wrapped her arms around Liam, shielding him as best she could. He was only 6, small for his age, with solemn brown eyes that had learned too early how to read adult pain. He held his teddy bear like it was the last solid thing in the world. The cardboard boxes at their feet were already collapsing, ink from labels bleeding into the water. That was when a figure appeared at the far end of the street, cutting through the rain with steady purpose. He moved differently from everyone else, not hurried, not hesitant. Focused. A large German shepherd trotted beside him, ears alert, paws splashing through puddles. The man wore a worn brown jacket, dark jeans, and boots that had seen more than city sidewalks. His eyes locked onto the scene ahead. Ethan Cole had returned home from his final mission only 3 months earlier. A former Navy SEAL, he had spent over a decade in places most people could not pronounce, doing things most people would rather not imagine. War had given him discipline, courage, and a quietness that unnerved strangers. It had also given him scars, some visible, most not. The German shepherd at his side, Ranger, had been his K-9 partner on 2 deployments. Ranger had saved his life more than once. Now they were both adjusting to civilian life, trying to find purpose in streets that felt too calm. Ethan had been on his way to a veteran support meeting when he noticed the woman and child. Something about the way the boy clung to the teddy bear, the way the mother's shoulders curved protectively around him, made Ethan slow his steps. He recognized that posture. He had seen it in villages overseas, in families caught between forces too large to fight. It was the posture of someone bracing for impact. Ranger sensed it too. The dog's ears tilted forward, and he let out a soft whine. Across the street, the landlord was still there, standing beneath the awning of the building, dry and impatient. He was pointing at the soaked boxes, his mouth moving in sharp bursts. Mara's face flushed with humiliation. She nodded stiffly, gathering what she could carry, trying not to cry in front of her son. Ethan felt something old and fierce stir inside him. A memory surfaced, Daniel Whitfield's grin during training, the way he had once joked about surviving boot camp just to escape his mother-in-law's cooking. Ethan had not seen Daniel in years, but the name lingered in his mind like a half-remembered melody. When he caught a glimpse of the folded flag peeking from a half-open suitcase, recognition hit him with stunning clarity. He crossed the street. The rain softened slightly, but the air remained thick with tension. Ethan approached without raising his voice, yet his presence alone seemed to shift the balance. Ranger stood at his side, calm but alert. Mara looked up, startled, her eyes wary. Strangers had not been kind lately. But there was something in Ethan's gaze, steady, unjudging, that made her pause. Ethan listened as the landlord repeated his rehearsed speech about unpaid rent and policy. He listened without interruption, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. When the man finished, Ethan stepped forward and asked a simple question: had he given them every legal notice required? The landlord hesitated. He had followed the letter of the law, but not its spirit. Ethan did not argue loudly. He did not threaten. Instead, he pulled out his phone and made a call. He contacted a fellow veteran who worked in legal aid for military families. He explained the situation in clipped, efficient sentences. Within minutes, the landlord's confidence began to crack. There were protections, it turned out, for families of fallen service members that he had conveniently overlooked. Technicalities that could delay proceedings. Potential penalties. The rain continued to fall, but something else began to shift in the air, hope, fragile and tentative. The landlord retreated under the weight of possible consequences. He muttered about misunderstandings and agreed to allow Mara a temporary extension while matters were reviewed. It was not a permanent solution, but it was time. Precious, breathing room. Mara's knees nearly gave out. She had prepared herself for the street, for shelters, for explaining to her son why they no longer had a home. Instead, this stranger had stepped into the storm and changed its direction. But Ethan was not finished. Over the next few days, he dug deeper. He reached out to old contacts, to veterans organizations, to a foundation Daniel had once mentioned in passing, a program created by former SEALs to support the families of the fallen. In a dusty storage unit across town, Ethan uncovered a box of letters and documents Daniel had entrusted to the foundation before his last deployment. Inside was something unexpected, a signed commitment from a private donors group, pledging financial support for Daniel's family should anything happen to him. The paperwork had been delayed, misplaced in administrative confusion after a staff change. No one had followed up. Until now. When Ethan brought the news to Mara, she stared at him as if he were describing a miracle. The foundation confirmed the promise. Not only would the back rent be covered, but there would be enough to secure a small house in a quiet neighborhood, close to Liam's school. Daniel had made arrangements, quietly and without fanfare, determined that his family would never face exactly what they had just endured. The day they moved into the modest white house with blue shutters, the sky was clear. Sunlight spilled across the lawn where a sturdy oak tree stood, its branches wide and strong. Liam ran toward it with unrestrained laughter, Ranger bounding beside him. Mara stood on the porch, hands trembling, overwhelmed by the sudden shift from despair to possibility. Ethan watched from a distance, feeling something inside him settle. He had carried guilt for surviving when others had not. Helping Mara and Liam did not erase that guilt, but it gave it direction. It transformed it into action. Weeks later, a small wooden platform began to take shape in the oak tree. Ethan worked carefully, measuring twice, securing every beam. Liam handed him nails with solemn concentration. Mara watched from below, her heart full in a way she had not allowed herself to feel since Daniel's death. The treehouse was not elaborate, but it was solid. It stood as proof that promises could outlive storms. That even when systems fail and people look away, there are those who step forward. As the sun set behind the rooftops, casting the yard in golden light, Mara felt Daniel's presence not as a ghost of grief but as a whisper of gratitude. He had not been able to keep every promise in person, but through foresight and through the loyalty of a fellow soldier, he had kept the most important one. Before we close this story, I want to ask you something from the heart. If this journey of resilience, sacrifice, and unexpected kindness moved you in any way, please comment the word "promise" below. Let's fill the comments section with a reminder that vows made in love can endure beyond loss. And if this story touched your heart, if it made you believe again that strangers can become lifelines and that hope can arrive on 4 steady paws in the middle of a storm, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe for more stories that celebrate courage and compassion. Your engagement helps these messages reach the people who need them most. Because sometimes, in the coldest rain, when everything seems lost, a promise is still waiting to be uncovered, and a hero is already on his way.